Good morning. Hello everybody. I'd like to start by once again acknowledging the warm welcome by Bill Warra-Lee yesterday, and also reflecting on the artwork by Yvonne Ogard and Beach Morning Glory, and it was a beautiful morning to wake up here in Darwin Harbour. Last night I met many of you and heard your stories, and I met a lot of people that were passionate and committed to the theme of our conference, which is tourism and Indigenous people enriching our future together. I'd like to start by announcing the winner of the early bird registration prize. Congratulations to Catherine Morton. Catherine won an AAT Kings 2-day Kakadu National Park and East Alligator tour, and she stayed at the Gagadoo Crocodile Holiday Inn. Thank you to the prize sponsors AAT Kings and IHG Gagadoo. To commence proceedings, I'd like to introduce the Honourable Martin Ferguson MP, Australian Minister for Tourism. He's going to address us today, and I'm sure you're aware that staging a conference of this nature, the first ever Pacific Asia Indigenous Tourist Conference, requires considerable support from all quarters. And Minister Ferguson has particularly provided support not just by attending and being here, but in spirit as well, taking time out of his busy schedule to come and express his own support and his government's commitment to our industry, the Indigenous tourism industry, but also our particular sector of it, the Indigenous tourism sector. I'd like to introduce Honourable Martin Ferguson to address us. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Tarika, and also acknowledge our special guest speaker, Anita, and I might say John King and all those associated with actually putting this conference together. And I must say to John, he actually locked in my attendance early last year in terms of the importance of this conference, so I give credit where credit is due. Ladies and gentlemen, can I firstly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet this morning, the Larrakia people, and in doing so pay my respects to their leaders, both past and present. Ladies and gentlemen, it's actually with great pleasure that I'm here today to discuss the future of Indigenous tourism in Australia with you. And I must say, from the point of view of the Tourism Ministerial Council, which is a meeting on a regular basis of both state and territory tourism ministers with myself, this issue is regarded of the utmost importance. So I not only speak on behalf of the Commonwealth today, I think I speak on behalf of the 9 tourism ministers across the length and breadth of Australia. In that context, I will seek to address some of the key issues going to the future of Indigenous tourism in Australia, and in doing so, look forward to the sharing of experiences from an Australian perspective with all the very important international guests in attendance at this conference. Today is also a passing opportunity to reflect on how we are seeking to incorporate these issues into our 2020 tourism strategy, which not only is about focusing on visitation from overseas, but also encouraging Australians to actually have a holiday at home, and in doing so to gain a better understanding of our historic culture. As you and I know, as an ancient continent with one of the oldest continuing cultures in the world, we as a nation have a unique story to tell our visitors. Some of our greatest tourism assets were formed more than 375 million years ago. The distinctive beehive mounds we call the Bungle Bungles, and the prominent red rock rising in the desert known as Uluru. The richness of these attractions, along with our vast desert lands, lush rainforests, white sandy beaches, and rugged mountain ranges, lie not only in their striking appearance, but also in the stories we tell about them. Stories that are often best told to visitors by a culture whose inhabitancy of this continent dates back at least 50,000 years. Australia attracts more than 5 million international visitors a year, and Australians take almost 70 million domestic overnight trips per annum. Our visitors, to be fair, are becoming increasingly sophisticated and more choosy. They have mobile phone access to information via their iPhones, iPads and vehicle GPS devices. They are seeking experiences which not only entertain but appropriately educate them and let them feel a part of the place they are visiting. They want Australian stories, images, experiences and memories to take home and share with family and friends. And I must say, from a tourism perspective, word of mouth is very important in the promotion of our attractions in Australia and overseas. And that's why we as an industry now have a very sharp focus on the issue of quality. Because if a particular operator lets us down as a nation, then it actually does us potential serious damage both domestically and internationally. That therefore presents a huge challenge but also a very important opportunity for us as a nation. By way of example, 9 out of 10 visitors recently surveyed about their visit to Central Australia were satisfied with their overall visit, but many visitors, particularly international visitors, were disappointed by the low level of Indigenous interaction in the region. And we conduct these surveys because that's about giving us positive feedback about how we can improve our performance. They expressed a very clear wish to be able to engage more with Indigenous Australians during their travels. Many Indigenous Australians, though, are sharing their culture with our visitors through tours, dance, storytelling, art, cooking, bush medicines classes and so much more. So we are actually doing some things right. At the same time, they are working at something they enjoy. They are preserving culture, often providing jobs for others, and contributing to the economic well-being of their communities. To be fair, many large tourism corporations such as Qantas, Accor Hotels and Crown Casino are also committed to Indigenous employment, training and education. But I simply say to many in industry that there is room for improvement. There is an Indigenous tourism opportunity that represents a win-win opportunity for all of us, including your own personal businesses. The challenge is therefore for industry, governments as well as communities to identify ways to increase Indigenous tourism experiences, not only in regional and remote areas but also in our capital cities. Indigenous heritage and associated employment needs to increasingly be a feature of every tourism experience, not only at iconic locations like Kakadu National Park, but also at places like SeaWorld, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and I might say the Eureka Tower in Melbourne. Accordingly, under the Tourism 2020 strategy, Australian tourism ministers have recognised the importance of Indigenous tourism and the need to progress it through the establishment of the Indigenous Tourism Working Group. This group, chaired by John Fitzgerald, the head of Tourism Northern Territory, is working to improve the quality, quantity and exposure of Australian Indigenous tourism products. This includes simple things, by way of example, as welcome to country signage at airports, which I noticed at Darwin Airport from the Larrakia people when I landed here last evening, very much supported and initiated by our local Minister Melandiri in terms of her leadership and support for that committee at the Tourism Ministerial Council. Further, last December, I held a roundtable meeting with tourism and hospitality industry leaders, very much supported by John King, including Indigenous leaders, to discuss and endorse actions to improve Indigenous participation in the tourism workforce. The group will initially focus on tourism employment hotspots in the Red Centre, Broome, Sydney and regional Victoria. It's about creating successful models and pilots to spread the word throughout the rest of Australia about what can be done if you're prepared to actually lead and give commitment. My department met with around 80 stakeholders in December to further discuss the employment plans in Broome and the Red Centre in the first instance. The objective is for the plans to link with local industry, including Indigenous interests, in terms of their interaction with government agencies and employment programs. At a federal government level alone, there are more than 10 government departments offering more than 35 different programs in support of Indigenous economic development. So you can imagine that part of it is actually educating people about the program assistance that is currently available. There is no requirement for additional programs at a state or federal level in Australia at the moment. It's about getting a proper understanding of the program support available, then linking employers and potentially employers with those opportunities at a government level. Accordingly, additional consultations are now being planned for May for the next 2 tourism employment plans in Sydney and regional Victoria. This is important because tourism is dominated by small businesses. So developing methods to assist small business with Indigenous employment makes sense. In tropical North Queensland, another pilot meant that 10 small businesses recently participated in an Indigenous traineeship pilot project involving the local regional tourism organisation. This had the support of federal and state government and local tourism operators and representatives. Through on-the-job work experience under this pilot, trainees studied Certificate 2 of Tourism, were offered back-of-house tours, met with invited guest speakers to learn about how they can also improve their own personal opportunities in life, such fundamental issues as healthy eating and hygiene, and communication and conflict resolution. All about getting people job ready and giving them the fundamental skills to get a start in this important career. The feedback is positive. 9 out of the 10 small businesses involved said they would be happy to participate again, confirming that the merits of the program are recognised in a practical way by the people who actually employ people in Australia. There has been an evaluation of the program by the department, and we will make this available on my department's website in the foreseeable future. But what about other practical government assistance for tourism product in Australia? I'm pleased that some Indigenous tourism projects have been given a boost through the government's TQual Grants program. This program, introduced by my government with funding up to $100,000 available for innovation tourism projects, including, of course, Indigenous tourism ones. Last year, of nearly $8.5 million funding that was offered to 117 successful projects throughout Australia, a significant amount, just under $1 million, went to tourism of an Indigenous nature. These included campsite infrastructure, for example, along the Larapinta Trail. But yesterday I actually attended a prime example of the success of these TQual grants on the Gold Coast in Queensland. It was a delight to visit the Yugambeh Aboriginal language region of southeast Queensland. There I saw firsthand the government's TQual grant program, helping the local Indigenous museum research and trial Indigenous tourism opportunities, develop cultural competency and education services for tourism operators, and develop an Indigenous tourism action strategy for the region. But perhaps more importantly, over and above that initiative with government support, yesterday the Yugambeh Aboriginal community signed a partnership agreement with four major local tourism operators to now extend their activities, for example, into a major theme park on the Gold Coast, to create further employment and training opportunities, and also confront more and more tourists with the history of that particular region. It's these strategic partnerships coming out of small grants with government that are actually going to produce the change in attitude and culture about the importance of Indigenous tourism over time. I'm also especially pleased to announce here today that the William Inglis Institute out of Melbourne has been awarded a $1 million grant for the Indigenous Business Quality and Skills Project at the Ayers Rock Resort. In May last year, the Indigenous Land Council, and they're not new to the tourism industry, with the traditional owners, acquired the Ayers Rock Resort. In the lead up to the purchase and since then, my department and office has been working with the organisation to increase Indigenous and tourism employment and business opportunities in the Red Centre. We have gone in that short period from about 2 locally employed Indigenous people to about 50 because of leadership, commitment and dedication of the new ownership of the resort and potentially, more importantly, the support given by the new management agency. The corporation has a goal of 350 Indigenous people employed by 2018. Today I can announce that the William Inglis Institute, the largest specialist single-purpose provider of tourism, hospitality and foods training in the Southern Hemisphere, will help them achieve that goal. They have experience in delivering Indigenous training in Western Australia, South Australia, Victoria and the NT. If my memory serves me correctly, they've also got experience in Timor-Leste. This project will fund the development and implementation of a business skills curriculum and related mentoring program through the Indigenous Land Corporation National Indigenous Training Academy at Ayers Rock Resort. I have seen a similar training unit conducted by the ILC at Home Valley in the Kimberley, where they also took over ownership of that resort and have produced some long-term career opportunities for Indigenous people trained through their training centre in the Kimberley. I congratulate William Inglis and look forward to hearing about the success of this project. It's not only important to them in terms of sourcing local labour, which is scarce in these regions, but it also gives us as a community an opportunity to overcome some of the social problems that have for all too long been part and parcel of the Red Centre, which all of us must accept responsibility for as a community. My friends, can I say in conclusion, the government is pleased to be here today to work with Indigenous groups and industry to deliver on Indigenous tourism and, in doing so, to deliver on economic opportunities for the Indigenous community and the broader tourism industry in Australia. A win-win for the whole of Australia. It's significant, not only because of the role it plays in preserving culture and assisting in cultural understanding and tolerance, but is what many of our visitors expect. They want it in their visitation, be it from people coming from overseas or from us as a community travelling within Australia. I look forward to the outcomes from this conference, which will assist in shaping the thinking and actions for government industry over the coming years. It is very much part of the government's 2020 tourism strategy. I especially thank the Pacific Asia Travel Association, the Australian Tourism Export Council and the Northern Territory Government through the Department of Tourism for all the assistance and organisation work that has gone into the lead up to this conference. I acknowledge and support the vision of the organisers to establish some principles for Indigenous tourism development and how to incorporate them into mainstream tourism activities in Australia. That is the challenge. The expert speakers and delegates gathered here today will discuss innovative ways to do business and how best to develop Indigenous tourism products and services. I'm sure too they will not only reflect on some of our mistakes but also celebrate our success, such as Coast Aboriginal Discovery, Yellow Water Cruises, Wildman Wilderness Lodge and other winners at the recent Qantas Tourism Awards held in Cairns. Some of the best products in Australia of an Indigenous nature recognised and given respect at the National Tourism Awards function held in Cairns only a matter of a couple of weeks ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Indigenous groups spread as widely as the US, Nepal and the South Pacific are attending this conference. Welcome, please contribute and enjoy your opportunity. This conference potentially marks an important milestone in the development of Indigenous tourism. I wish you well in your deliberations and officially declare this very important conference open. Thanks for the opportunity to be with you today.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your words of encouragement and for giving us the scoop on some of those important announcements happening with your department and in the industry. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank AusAid for their support in bringing together many of the delegates that have come from the Pacific Asia countries, and also to present you with a memento of thanks on behalf of all the delegates for coming along and sharing your time with us today. We might also invite you to, it's a very important book by, not giving it too much away, it's a very famous book and you might like to stick around and hear from the author. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I look forward to reading Anita's book. And I must say, in my trade union days, I was very active in terms of the change that's occurred in South Africa, and I look forward to listening to your experiences and your achievements. I could also say, I give recognition to Terry. Terry is a statement about the importance of this industry because she actually serves on the Tourism Australia National Board, which is the leadership of the Commonwealth Tourism commitment from the Australian Government's point of view. So please keep up all the good work.
Thank you very much, Minister. Now we have something very exciting, something I've